It's a very long sermon. It's longer than the sermon. It's not really. But that first bit is just kind of a broad covering to describe all the sermons from August. What are we going to tell all the people who will be coming here in September looking for a new church? And then on the next 4 weeks, I'm going to talk about some things that I would like to say to people who come in to St. Andrews to visit or who are looking for a church home. And first of all, it's very presumptuous of me to think that people are going to come here, but I think it's a very solid assumption because in the summertime, lots of people move, and then once they settle down in July and August, if they're going to look for a church, they look for a church in September. So we need to be ready for them with arms open, saying, this is a good place to make your church home. So we know they're coming for that. There's also going to be people coming because if you look around you in your neighborhood, you will know that an awful lot of churches are in a desperate struggle to survive. Churches are dying all around us. And it's a terribly sad process for the members of those churches, and they will be out looking for a church that is confident about the future and is making plans for the next 100 years of sharing the gospel and living in the light of God's love. And St. Andrews is that church. We will receive them. We will give them the home that they are seeking. We also know that people are going to come because we've been working so hard through the summer to make our church a more welcoming place, a place that's better able to convey the good news to all kinds of people. We've been working on our physical structure. We've been working on the Christian education program because children and youth and teenagers are so important to us. We've been working on revising our mission strategy. We have been doing everything, and God says that if you work and if you prepare, I will not disappoint you. I also think people will come here because St. Andrews has a gospel message that is powerful and relevant to daily living in the 21st century. In a world filled with turmoil, we understand that the substance of the gospel is the equality of all people, the worth of all people, the eternal significance of all people. That is the message that will save and change the world, and we have it. I also know that people are going to come here looking for a new church in September because I prayed that they would. And from this point onwards into the fall, you are all going to pray for that too. And you're going to say, God, by the power of your Holy Spirit, bring people to St. Andrews so that we can share the gospel with them and live in community with them in the light of God's love. But maybe the biggest reason why people are going to come is this. Because they watch the news. And because they see a world that is in a time of turmoil and trouble and sadness and pain, and they are looking for answers. They see what's happening in Palestine and Israel, and with us, their hearts are broken for the families in Israel who live in daily fear of those Qassam rockets coming in at random times in random directions. Their hearts break for the little children in Palestine under bombardment by the world's most sophisticated military force. They weep for the people of the Ukraine in a time of absolute civil unrest. They see the people of Nigeria terrorized by Boko Haram. They weep as they see news of Air Malaysia flight MH17 and the 298 persons who died on it. A gas explosion in Taiwan, the downing of Air Algeria with the cost of 118 lives, the Ebola outbreak in West Africa, Iraq embroiled in a civil war and its people moving out as refugees to Syria, and Syria itself is afire with violence. And we see struggle with you. And we, the church, through action by churches together, whenever it is possible, we are on the scene of those disasters, and we do everything that we can to alleviate suffering, to create infrastructure that takes away sickness and brokenness, to lift up humankind above such violence and hate. We have a plan, we have a strategy, and we need your help to implement it worldwide. And we say to those people, God cares about the suffering, and God is with those who are suffering. And we say to those people, there is a future. Even though the world looks broken, and the future looks bleak, we know that God's plan for humankind is one of redemption and unity and wholeness and healing by the power of Jesus Christ. We need to struggle with the way in which God relates to us. And sometimes we who are Presbyterians have a really narrow view of God's relationship to humankind. We've gotten so taken up in Reformed theology, we forget that there are other ways to think about how God is with God's people. And some of those other ways are perhaps a little more helpful and healing. You would ask a Presbyterian, well, like me, how does God relate to us? What is God's purpose? I was brought up in the context of a thing called substitutionary atonement, whereby God's major concern with us is that we are miserable, broken sinners. And in substitutionary atonement, Jesus steps in to pay the price for our sin with the shedding of his blood. Sometimes we refer to that as forensic salvation. And I know you all love the word forensic because you watch CSI, Criminal Minds, but in that context, forensic means scientific, but the origin of the word forensic is Latin, from the Latin forum, in the public eye. And forensic really means that putting forward an argument that will convince the people in the forum. And it refers to the Roman court system, which was always carried out with a public audience. So typically when we think of God's relationship to us, or of salvation, we think of a courtroom, the forum, the forensic realm, in which we are brought forward into the court, facing a number of charges, and God is the judge, and God judges us guilty and pronounces the sentence of death, and at the last moment, Jesus steps in and says, take my life instead. That's forensic salvation, substitutionary atonement. And it's good. It's in the Bible. But it's only one way to talk about how God looks at us. And there are lots of other places in the Bible that are not so obsessed with guilt, with the courtroom, with this angry God who has a need for there to be balance. There are other ways to think about how God relates to us, and we need to teach people and share with them those other ways. Ways that forget the courtroom and the forensics and the substitutionary atonement altogether, set them aside. And instead see that what God is concerned with is not our guilt. God is concerned with our hurt and our brokenness. God is not saying to us, I am angry with you and I demand judgment. What God is really saying is, I love you. And I am so sorry to see you in pain. I am so saddened by your brokenness. I feel your hurt with you. I want your hurt to be healed by my love and by my tenderness. 1 John 4:7-11 has a way of talking about God's interaction with us that is different from the say, where is God? And John says, no one has ever seen God. But if we love each other, we live in union with God, and God's love is made perfect in us. God is in us. In our love, in our tenderness, in our compassion. That is God. God is our tears when we are broken by grief and sadness because someone that we love has been hurt, or because we see on the news God's children suffering. The tears that we cry, that is God. And it lets us know that we are alive and we are living souls, and we still have a capacity to feel sadness and pain. It is good that we feel that, and it is good that we weep. It means that God is in us. God is our tears. Let's tell that to people who come in. God is our laughter. That in a world of darkness and brokenness and suffering and pain, we still laugh. And some people think that laughter is weak or shallow or superficial, but I assure you of this, in a world of brokenness and suffering, where every person has pain, when you laugh, you are reaching down into that deep part of the soul which gives rise to faith and to love and to hope, and laughter is God. Your joy is the Lord. And I'm not the first person to say that. David, the psalmist, said it long before I did. Let us tell you. Do not think of God as a judge. That image is okay, but it's incomplete. God is your tears. God is your laughter. God is your love. And moved by those things, we have a great mission. That we will be with those who suffer. That we